Hello children, it's Grandma Carla, and I am here to read you more of Freddy and the Perilous Adventure, and we are on chapter 14 and getting close to the end of our book. Although there hadn't been time to print handbills or to get the names of Freddy and the mice parachutist up on the poster, Mr. Boomschmidt had instructed Oscar to announce the facts about the balloon ascension to everyone buying a ticket, so that at 2 o'clock, the time announced, a large crowd had assembled. Men stood at the ropes, ready to cast the balloon off. The mice and the ducks were lined up on the edge of the basket, and when Freddy and Mr. Gulcher climbed up the little stepladder and got in, a loud cheer went up. "Well now, make your speech," said Mr. Gulcher, "and we'll push off." He glanced up at the big bag of the balloon which hung above them. "She seems a little heavy. Maybe we ought to have got more gas in her, but I guess we'll go up all right." He stumbled and looked down at his feet. "What is all this stuff in here?" "There does seem to be a lot more of it," said Freddy. "I guess maybe we didn't pack the blankets and the boxes very well." "Well, we can fix it after we start," said Mr. Gulcher. "We can't all have all of these piles of stuff underfoot. But get on with your speech." So Freddy leaned over the edge of the basket. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said, "friends and well-wishers, animal and human, citizens of South Pharisee, Clamville, Upper Catawamapus, Bounding Brook, and all communities thereto appertaining, and with them connected in whatsoever fashion and by whatsoever means, I greet you." And then he stopped. "Get on with it, get on with it," said Mr. Gulcher impatiently. But Freddy realized suddenly that he didn't know what to say. He had been so busy wondering how he was going to get the $200 back that he had forgotten that he had a speech to make. And now here he was with a huge audience, hanging breathless upon his words, and there weren't any words for them to hang on. But he had to say something. "Unaccustomed as I am," he went on nervously, "to appearing before such a large and distinguished audience as I now see before me, I feel that no words of mine can express the great honor which you have done me. As indeed is a pleasure and a privilege to address you. And I wish to say that he stopped again, but only for a moment, for suddenly he knew what he would say. "At Centerborough, on the 4th, he said, I went up in this same balloon. The valve cord was stuck, and I couldn't get down. But Mr. Gulcher thought I had stolen it and had the police looking for me. He also went to my owner, Mr. Bean, and demanded and obtained from him $200. That $200 was to pay him for—" "Here, none of that," said Mr. Gulcher angrily, and he seized Freddy by the shoulder and pulled him back, at the same time giving a signal to the men to cast off. "Go on," shouted the crowd. "Let him talk." The balloon, released from its moorings, gave a lurch and started off. But instead of going up into the air, it swept across the circus grounds with the basket barely clearing the heads of the crowd, who ducked and ran in all directions. Hastily, Mr. Gulcher threw out half a dozen bags of sand that were hung on the sides of the basket, and the balloon rose a little, but sluggishly, and barely enough to keep them from catching on the tall fence that separated the circus grounds from the open fields. "Feels as if she was full of lead," said Mr. Gulcher perplexedly. "Can't understand it. There should be enough gas in the bag to lift our weight." He threw out the last of the sand, and they gained a few more feet. "Not enough," he said. "We'll foul those trees when we get across the valley. Well, Pig, I guess one of us has got to jump out." He grinned angrily at Freddy. "And that one ain't Gulcher." "It ain't Freddy either," said the pig firmly. "If your old balloon won't go up, pull the valve cord and bring it down. When Gulcher gets paid for an ascension, he makes an ascension," replied the balloonist. "Bring her down, eh? You don't suppose Boomschmidt will pay $200 for this performance, do you?" Freddy looked over the side. They were traveling with a breeze at a pretty good rate of speed, and the ground was 10 feet below the edge of the basket. It looked pretty hard, and there were stones in it. Still, Give me Mr. Bean's $200 and I'll jump, said Freddy bravely. Alice and Emma began quacking excitedly. No, no, Freddy, good gracious. You'll be broken all to pieces. It won't hurt him in the slightest, said Uncle Wesley. Do be quiet, my dears. Well, I'm going to jump out, said Alice. That will lighten the balloon some. Come, Emma. Yes, sister, said Emma obediently, and they jumped and fluttered to the ground. The balloon went up perhaps a foot. We can jump too, said Eek, adjusting his parachute. What do you say, boys? Sure, said Cousin Augustus, but how about Wesley? Scared, Duck? Don't be ridiculous, said Uncle Wesley in a superior tone. If you can show me one good reason why I should make a public exhibition of myself in this vulgar way. One good reason, explained Eenie. He winked at the other mice. Here's 4 good reasons. Come on, boys. And they rushed at the duck, nipping at him with their sharp little teeth and pushing him, struggling and protesting, to the edge. Stop, he quacked. This is an outrage. This is ouch. Oh, you're killing me. Oh. With a despairing quack, he fell. A distant cheer from the spectators they had left behind came to the balloonist, for the sight of 4 mice floating to earth on tiny parachutes was, even at that distance, a remarkable sight. But even with Uncle Wesley and the mice gone, the balloon plainly would not clear the trees towards which they were rapidly drifting. You're next, Pig, said Mr. Gulcher. Give me Mr. Bean's money and I'll jump, said Freddy. Mr. Gulcher started to reach for him and then drew back. It wouldn't be easy to throw Freddy out because a pig is almost as hard to get a hold of as a seal, and everybody knows that that is practically impossible. Mr. Gulcher glanced at the approaching trees, and then he said, Ha! Gulcher's a fair man. Gulcher will make you a sporting proposition. He'll wrestle you for it. If you can put Gulcher down, he'll pay you the $200 and you can jump. But if Gulcher puts you down, you'll jump without the money. I don't think that's very fair, said Freddy, but I want that money, so I'll do it. No fair biting, said Mr. Gulcher, and he grabbed Freddy around the neck. Freddy's legs were too short to be of any use in a wrestling match, and he couldn't do much to put Mr. Gulcher down. About all he could do was to struggle out of the different holds that Mr. Gulcher got him in and keep from being put down himself. They thrashed and rolled and kicked, and Freddy began to pick up hope. For every time he felt himself being forced down on his back, something strange seemed to happen to Mr. Gulcher. He seemed to slip or trip over the huge pile of blankets that took up so much of the basket, and Freddy was able to pull free. And then suddenly Mr. Gulcher seemed to have a convulsion, and he fell on his back and lay there with Freddy on top of him. I win, panted Freddy, and got up, but Mr. Gulcher lay still. Oh, goodness, said Freddy, I hope I haven't killed him. And then he looked more closely and saw that an enormous paw was resting on Mr. Gulcher's chest, and the paw was attached to a huge forearm covered with tawny fur that came out from under the blankets. Leo, he exclaimed. The blankets heaved and the lion's head came out. Congratulations, old boy, it said. That was a great fight you put up. He took his paw off Mr. Gulcher's chest. Get up, mister, he said, and give this boy his money. And as Mr. Gulcher slowly opened his eyes, the lion bared his teeth and gave a rumbling growl that made the basket vibrate. There was a gurgling noise in Mr. Gulcher's throat, and his eyes kept on opening until they were twice as wide open as usual, and his mouth came open at the same time, and all at once a big yell came out of it, and he leaped up and he vaulted right over the edge of the basket, and as the balloon, relieved of his weight, shot up into the air, they looked down and saw him slipping and slithering to the earth through the branches of a small tree, which had fortunately broken his fall. Oh, Leo, exclaimed Freddy, he's hurt. That cherry juice on his face, not blood, said Leo. That's a cherry tree. Yes, and that bulge in his back pocket is Mr. Bean's $200, said Freddy. Not that I couldn't have taken it away anyway, for I didn't lick him, but I didn't jump. Leo, you oughtn't to have interfered. Well, dye my hair, said the lion. Is that the thanks that I get for spending 2 hours under a pile of hot blankets on a day when it's 90 in the shade? You carry your honesty too far, pal. That money does not belong to Gulcher. And anyway, we can get it back to its rightful owner in an honest way. Maybe you're right. And I've got an idea, Leo. See what you think of it. Hey, what's the matter? For Leo had leaned his head against the side of the basket and closed his eyes. Feel queer, muttered the lion, waving a feeble paw. Awful queer. Might have been, baked beans I had for supper last night. Ugh. Mustn't think of that. Let me down out of here. Maybe you're a little seasick. Freddy saw that they had passed over the trees and were drifting across a wide hayfield. He pulled the valve cord, and in a moment they began slowly to go down. A few minutes later, they stepped up out of the basket, and having let most of the gas out of the balloon so that the half-collapsed bag rested like a giant mushroom on the ground, they started back towards the circus. But they had taken only a few steps when Freddy turned around. I forgot the webs, he said, so he went back and got the spiders. But when he rejoined Leo, the lion was stretched out flat on the ground. Leave me, my friend, moaned Leo tragically. There's nothing you can do for me now. Tell Mr. Boomschmidt, just a small tomb, nothing expensive or ostentatious. With a few words carved on it, perhaps you could write a suitable epitaph, Freddy. Just some modest and unassuming sentiment. Nonsense, said Freddy briskly. You aren't going to die, Leo. You think not? Murmured Leo. You take from me my last hope? Freddy looked at him and grinned. He said thoughtfully. Perhaps I'm wrong. You do look pretty bad. Of course, dying from seasickness, well, it's sort of ridiculous. Sort of like being run down by a baby carriage. But don't worry, I won't let anybody laugh or say slighting things. I'll stand up for funny, eh? Leo jumped to his feet. Just let him try laughing, that's all, he glared ferociously. Come on, said Freddy. I want to try my plan. That's the end of chapter 14. So let's look at our pictures. Here are the 4 mice parachuting out of the balloon. Doesn't that look like fun? I don't think that parachuting is for Grandma Carla. I don't know what I would do if I had to parachute. And here is poor Gulcher, who got tackled by the lion's paw. There's Leo under the blanket, and Freddy wondering how on earth poor Mr. Gulcher got tackled to lie down like that until he saw Leo's arm. And that is the end of chapter 14, and we will start chapter 15 in a little bit. This is Grandma Carla, and I love you.